Right.
have to pay it.
Right.
You don't know Braille, do you? So I guess
No, I'm not, no.
not fluent in Braille.
We learned a lot of stuff in West Terre Haute, but
Not-
I didn't get Braille.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I didn't have Braille either.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Other than that, not a whole-
Well, if they
Yeah, other than
charge
that, I
you, then
think
you gotta
everything is
pay
trying
it,
to-
that's what I said.
Yeah. And I believe when that agreement comes up, how did that work in the past? With the agreement with when we did the original one, are they a part of that agreement, or I'm sure, probably?
Yeah, the commissioners had to sign for that agreement too, but we've never been
Yeah.
charged, we've been out
For
there since
contraction,
'09, we've
they
never been
didn't have
charged
to
with,
use
the county's never paid utilities on the
Utilities
building.
off.
They've never had a way to break it out. It goes to the guard bureau in one big chunk and they just pay,
You pay off of it.
At $1,200 a month for us, that what they figured is, they don't even see us really, but they keep coming back saying that the agreement that we currently have is invalid, because it was done kind of under the table between back then, and it's just never changed, so they want to get it brought up
A
to
new
date.
agreement, yeah.
They want to get it brought up to date. So, and so that was part of it, was to, for us to, start paying utilities on the bill.
That sounds reasonable. Okay.
Saved a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't see any other differences.
Thank you, guys.
But
You all done?
This is LEPC.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing's changed from last year. Again, this is just money, this is not tax money, but you guys, the council is the stewards of the money. So, we just have to put in a budget with you every year for that, but it's, money that is derived from, manufacturing facilities here that have, hazardous chemicals that have to pay into what they call the tier 2. So that's what we get a cut of that, about $8,000 to $9,000 a year, goes into that line item.
As a reminder to the committee, and try to remember, this is a budget that the committee tried to cut a couple
They
years
cut us
ago.
from
They
the
cut it, and we really absolutely got an email from the state that told us, you're just to approve it. You don't have the right as a council to cut the budget.
It's money that can only be used by LEPC. It's, before LEPC controlled all the money and stuff, and then things got a little out of hand with some of the counties, so they decided to let the county councils of each county be the actual stewards, hold the money, and then divvy it out as we asked
Yeah,
for.
but they were not happy that
Yeah, there's an ordinance or an
it's
IC code
out
that
there.
says
They sent me an email.
that the money has to be used for however we see fit, so.
Well, and hopefully
Yeah.
never.
That was
any issue with hazardous
23,
materials.
if you see, because they had to come back in and do the adjustment
Yeah,
to give it back. And like you said, it's based on how much they get, and
Right.
they've always used the same amount, but they never spend it all, as you can
right.
see, and that's why it carries over such a balance. It
'Cause-
carries over a balance.
Yeah, we can
To be
always,
able to fund that.
we supply the hazmat teams in the county with equipment if they need it. A lot of them don't realize that. We try to tell them, say, if you got anything that you need, come to us. We've got the money to spend on that. So just let us know. But sometimes they don't think about it. They just take it out of their normal budget and go with it.
It was interesting, Travis Norris on the council came out to visit your place, and Todd
Yeah.
Thacker, well, they came back here like two kids. I thought they'd never shut up talking about what a great place it was.
Did we make that kind of an impression on them? Yes, I don't.
So we're
But,
we're gonna send them out and get them jobs working for you.
Yeah. So, they came, Travis came, he says, I thought you were 3 offices out there. We've got a lot of surge equipment. That's what helped us through COVID, was the surge equipment that we kept out there from, and we got all that equipment gave to us back in '08 from the flooding. Cook Pharmaceutical down in Bloomington,
Yeah,
they emptied their warehouse out
wow.
because they had stuff they wanted to get rid of, and they thought, oh, what a great opportunity. So
Yeah,
showed
they
up with
thought they'd dump it on you.
They showed up with a Ryder truck full of, a big Ryder rental truck full of stuff. We unloaded it. Of course, Doc is she's Polish, so she's a hoarder. She keeps everything, and so we have all that stuff in storage, and that really kind of carried us through until Troy and her could finally get supplies coming in during COVID and stuff. And then,
Wow.
so we built that back up again. So that was a lot of our stuff is surge equipment that we keep in case of disasters and things like that.
Well, that's what you do.
There's going to probably eventually be another pandemic or
Ooh,
something.
gosh.
Oh,
There
don't say
seem to
that.
be happening, but
I know, Troy just gave you.
Do not say that.
he just gets he got thrown into it with anyways. Also for LEPC, September 19th, we are having a lithium battery training at Ivy Tech.
Boy, those things are dangerous, I'm
Yes.
telling you.
I mean,
Don't get
we're-
on an
we-
airplane with
we-
one, I'll tell you that.
LEP set it up. We're not getting a lot of response from area fire departments and things like that. We thought we would, but so if anybody's got wants to come, you're free. It's free of charge.
You know, did you call the TV stations and tell them about that? I bet you people would come if you would tell them.
Yeah, we haven't really. I don't think we've put it out to the media or anything like, but we have put it out to District 7. We put it out to the state so that they could send. Anybody want.
And
Most of the universities.
What's the
ISU's
date,
got
what's the date again?
September 19th. There's 2 sessions, 4 hours each, one from 8 to noon, and then 1 to 5. The guy is out of Colorado. He's got a business that pretty much he's a firefighter out there. And he has an extrication business that he does. He teaches up at FDIC this same class, so we've already paid for it. So
Well, and he'll be doing demonstrations and things like that, or
It'll be,
just,
it's going to be all lecture and things like that.
Okay.
Demonstrations, it's kind of hard to do a demonstration.
what, blow things
Because
up?
it's because it's something that if it catches fire, you can't put it out.
Well,
It's
that's
gotta like
bad.
burn itself out. You can smother it to a certain point and cool it down, but if it's damaged, if the lithium cell's damaged, it's just gonna reignite, it's gonna overheat and reignite. So it's a little hard to do demos. They do demos, but it's on a very small scale.
Might have videos.
Yeah.
Videos of demos.
Yeah. What we said, that one video, the guy that just took a nail and drove it into a battery pack out of a cell phone. And I mean, it just immediately swelled up and burst into flames. So you can see him on YouTube all the time.
But I don't, well, now I say that.
People don't realize how dangerous those things are. They are really, really
It
dangerous.
only collects about 8. It only collects
Well,
about 8,000.
we'll pass the word around about this.
They just get it from the
Thank you
state.
so
We've
much.
got we'll let you know, we got a website that you can go to and sign up online.
Okay. Well, if you send that to Cheryl or Jimmy, that would be terrific, and we'll post it out here too.
Will do.
Thanks a lot,
Troy,
guys.
say hi to the fam, your
will.
in-laws and your wonderful wife.
Oh my goodness. It's a wonder I'm that one.
Right there.
They give me that.
I'll be sure and tell Troy, Travis
Take
about
9,000.
this workshop too. I bet he'll come.
Yeah,
And
Please do.
Todd.
please do. So, okay.
Troy, how old's your oldest now?
Oh my God. Morgan is 13 going
Right
on
there.
16.
And that's about what it brings in. Next week, he's about right.
So she's at the middle school?
Oh yeah, she's a big bad 8th grader this year.
Oh my gosh.
Owen's
But-
going into 6th grade. Owen's decided he wants to play tennis, so he's coming out from his cave, his gaming,
That's good.
to do that. Yeah, which is interesting. But now I know nothing about tennis, so now I'm like back in the. I don't know.
It's okay, you just hit a ball and then cheer when everyone else does.
Well, that's what I thought, and I look at the scoring, it's like 15, 30.
Oh, yeah.
By 15s, I'm like, how does this work?
Yeah.
We can't do ones.
The good thing is you can't really mess up because they don't like people cheering at tennis. So, when everything's done, you just go, good job. Or, you'll do better next time.
Well, that ruins my theory. Then my first game, we were bringing everybody and having
I
those
know.
big fat head things to hold up with his head
I
on and
know.
screaming. None of that.
You do whatever you want. You do you, man.
I'll be thrown out of there.
Tell them all hi, though.
Absolutely, I will.
All right.
Where's, oh my gosh, I must have called her Nicole.
Jackie,
Jackie. God, I was blanking out for a second. Where's she working at now?
she's teaching at Ivy Tech now.
That's what I was thinking. She was doing something with them.
It's funny because she was never going to be teaching.
No.
Follow what the whole family did.
Yeah, it's a little different with college age kids, but
Get anything done with your house yet?
Yeah. She'll be awesome. Yeah. I was gonna say it's a good area. My son's he's in his second year of being a PA, and he had to do a surgical rotation. He's like, oh, all the people that have to be part of the team. He was all in. He's like, second, he said, I was kind of like, when you go to the dentist, it's just with the surgeon. You got the person sucking all the spit and stuff. I mean, because that's, everyone's. But, oh. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what my son was exercise science, so pretty similar path, and he wanted to be a PE. He switched over to PA, because he's got a messed up wrist, and he wanted to be a PE. So, yeah, it's crazy what you can do. Well, no, thank you. No, thank you. I used to get all grossed out when y'all would talk about hunting and dressing the deer. Well, that's what Austin said the worst part was, and I'm sure that, Jackie dealt with this too, was, when he's like, I'd be doing a surgery, and he said, I don't really, I look at the conditions of these, he said, but I try not to look at the names, because he said, when you realize it's something, there was one that he said, and she eventually told me, like, her surgery was very involved. She was, I'm pretty sure your son had his hands all in my guts. And I said, well, I don't think he knew at the time. I said, I think we're ahead of the game in Indiana and nationwide. Like Marion County does have some social workers, but they're not providing services. They're just sort of directing people. Yeah, that's one thing I was gonna talk about is, yeah. Mhm. Mhm. So we've tried to collaborate with ISU quite a bit. And what happens is, we need someone at the master's level. And for those internships, they want to be paid. And I get that. I mean, by then they're in an age where they need income. And I think maybe at the undergraduate level, but I don't think undergraduate level, yeah, that's the problem is if we use people who are just in the undergraduate level, they're not old enough to understand all these, it wouldn't help us any. It's confidential, and unless you've had some life experience, I think it's hard to really understand what's happening. Yeah. Mhm. I work with, I can't remember her last name, Joellen. She was the head of the, I think, social work department at ISU. Henson, Joellen Henson is who I was working with. She's with Casey now. Yeah, yeah, she's doing really good. They were pretty excited to be able to get her. Yeah.
There are a few.
Oh, good.
People
I'm not
back
all
and
that
forth.
tech savvy, but
Well, this is
will
that era.
we'll go forward. Okay. I'm sure Candace is gonna join us, but she might be running a little bit late. I know. Sophomore. Yeah. Is that right? It's a very popular name. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why, are they pretty hard? Say that again? Not family recovery is just family court. Yeah. I don't think she ever did. Mm-mm. You just tell me when you're ready. You want me to start? All right, Lakshmi Reddy with Vigo Superior Court 2. So I'm here to talk about the request for $200,000 for family court. So I'm going to go through I'm going to talk fast. You've got the PowerPoint in front of you if you can't see it on the screen, but this is not, uncommon knowledge. 50% of marriages are going to end in divorce. 50% of children are going to experience divorce.
And this is an interesting figure, that daughters of divorced parents have a 60% higher chance of getting a divorce, and sons have a 35% higher chance. These are all the different
Curious.
effects.
That's curious.
Not surprising, but, these are the effects that we're seeing, for children of divorce. You've got a higher chance of psychopathology, academic underachievement, substance abuse disorders, depression, anxiety, aggression, conduct disorder, delinquency, impulsive behaviors. Not surprising that if you have high conflict divorce, which most of mine are, they've got higher rates of chronic stress and emotion. Studies have also shown, I think you're going to find this first one interesting, that you're going to have a higher rate of delinquency for crimes against person, general delinquency, tobacco and drug use, and felony theft. Also not surprising that if you've got parents who are in prison, it's going to impact children negatively, both short-term and long-term. We talk a lot about the jail overcrowding problem, but the one thing we forget is, how's that impacting the children? There's a lot of parents that are in that jail, but we don't ever stop to think, how's it affecting those children? So a quick recap of where we started. I came on the bench in 2015. I spent several years just researching what are the problems, what are the different kinds of strategies of how to really deal with these divorce cases. And I will say, the things we're doing, people say they're innovative, but I will say all of this research has been around since the 1980s. Back in the 80s, they were suggesting social workers in the courts. They were suggesting early intervention. We didn't do it because people didn't want to put the money into it. They didn't quite see the value, but I think now what we're seeing is all of the ramifications of not doing some of these things. So finally in 2020, we sort of came up with this overall broad project of what we wanted to do. We found a grant through the Division of State Mental Health and Addiction. And so that's sort of how we started. As in 2021, we came to the County Council. We asked for a $25,000 matching fund, and then the Wabash Valley Community Foundation gave us a $25,000 matching fund. We applied for that grant, and we got about $350,000 for a 2.5-year project. And every year I did say I'm going to come back for more money. And so in 2022, I came back for $50,000, and the council was very generous and gave that. And that really helped us really get this project going, along with the grant from the state. So we got a family navigator who does all the case management. The next slide will talk about all the services. But then in 2023, I asked for $100,000, and you were very generous to grant that as well. And again, I did say every year I'd come back for more, and I have, and we're asking for $200,000. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, the different things that we are doing. I will say, and Marie, this was something you indicated, is I don't think there is another county in the state of Indiana that is providing the services that we do. And when I've gone to speak at different judicial conferences, they've been astonished, like, how are you getting that kind of money from the council? I think they're really impressed with that. But no one is providing these services, and I don't even think nationwide they are. I've been collaborating with the National Center for State Courts, and there are a lot of people that, they might have those services in place, but they're not paid for. And that's one thing I struggled with for 6 years is I can order services, but if health insurance doesn't cover it and people can't afford it, it just sort of falls apart. I'm not going to put people in jail because you can't pay for the services. So this is really where this, I think, has been very impactful. So these are all the services that are being paid for. We have the Family Navigator. We still have a little bit of money left, and Candace maybe could tell us how much money is left from that grant, but we're about at the end of the 2.5-year project. It provides individual counseling, family counseling, co-parenting, anger management, parenting classes, supervised parenting time, psychological evaluations, batter's intervention, play therapy, wraparound mentor. One of the biggest things that we were doing is at the very beginning of a case, we are having all children receive what we call a biopsychosocial assessment, and then a CATS, which is a child and adolescent trauma screening. So we know very early on, how are these kids really doing? What kind of services do they really need? And that's been a tremendous benefit. I had talked with the school corporation about, hey, can we start doing this in kindergarten? Because California was trying to do something like this. And I understand what the school says, like, well, we would love to do that, but we're going to open up a can of worms, because what we're going to see is what we're seeing is that 90% of these kids have some kind of trauma. How are we going to pay for it, right? There's not really much point in just knowing if you can't carry out their services, but that's been really valuable because we know early on, hey, these kids are doing fine. They don't need any services. These kids are not. Here's what we're learning. Candace gets a wealth of information because she meets with them one-on-one in a nice private setting, not in court where people feel intimidated. So she gets a lot of information about these families that I never would, to make sure they get into the right kinds of services.
To kind of go back to that, so if they have insurance or coverage, they're using that.
We are
That's,
yes.
that's helping pick up for those
Yes.
families that fall
Yes.
between the cracks.
We are charging,
financially.
and parents know that. We say, if your health insurance doesn't cover it, so the first step is trying to get health insurance. But health insurance doesn't cover as much as you will think it will
No,
cover
not with
when
getting
it
it.
comes to, especially when it's from a court proceeding. I think that's been the real struggle. Or they'll cover, a few counseling sessions, but not enough. You're not gonna get very far, with 3 sessions. So there's a couple of things that we're doing. I have one social worker that's contractual, and that's actually paid by a grant from the Indiana Supreme Court. So what we've started doing very early is, as soon as we get service on the respondent, we schedule a case management conference with a social worker within 2 weeks. So they're meeting with a social worker, they're filling out the form, so we have their contact information, we get them to consent to be in the program, and she can sort of assess, hey, is this gonna be an easy case, is it a hard case, what kind of services are you recommending? And then they go and talk with Candace, and then Candace gets them into services. So what we're seeing is, we are getting people into services before they even have a court hearing. And I think that's really beneficial, because if you're waiting sometimes 3 months, 4 months to get into court, things are falling apart. And the one nice thing we have, I think, because Casey has hired their own counselors, there's not a long wait list. We're getting people within 1 to 2 weeks. Elsewhere, you're waiting months to get in, and I just don't think that's helping families. It's just causing further trauma. And the other nice thing is, when they do it this way, it's voluntary. And when people do things voluntarily, they're more likely to participate. When it's a court order, yeah, they'll do it, but begrudgingly. And so I think this has really helped, that it's in a different kind of setting, and they're encouraged, and they understand, we're not trying to get you in trouble. We just want your children to do better. I think that's been really helpful. We've got collaboration with, multiple organizations, and Candace can talk about that. The one really big missing piece that's been hard to do is how to really collect this data. Like, we know from a very intangible point of view, this is working. We know it's working because of how people appear when they come back into court. We know it's working because I talk to kids. We know it's working because Candace talks with the teachers, and teachers can see that there's, improvement in their behavior, parents. So we know on that level, but that's very subjective. So I'm talking with the National Center for State Courts. They just wrote a grant for me to try and see how can they come in, assess the project, make recommendations, and then really work on the data collection, because I think that's really important, because long-term, we want to keep applying for grants to pay for this, but we got to show how it's working. And us just saying we know it's working, it's not going to fly. So we're really hoping, they feel optimistic we can get a grant to get better data collection on that. So just a little bit about cost. There's some statistics that say that one divorce can cost about $30,000 in increased food stamps, public housing, bankruptcy, juvenile delinquency. We are spending $8.3 billion a year on depression. You saw one of the slides earlier that that's a big factor from children going through divorce, is suffering from depression. The community cost, new jails, not surprising. I'm a big believer that if we start this early intervention and we're willing to put the money into it for another 10 to 15 years, we're going to see that repercussions. We're going to see the benefit in our jail system. I could be wrong, but I think that's where we're ending up with all these children in jail, is we're not focused on how are they doing very early. A little bit more about here. This is, my intern put this together, so hopefully these figures are all correct, but it looks like we're spending about $14.5 million on the jail budget. It's about 23% of our budget. I think we're spending, and you might have the figures, about $138 a day per inmate. If we, if you had an inmate in for 30 days, you're spending more than $4,000. Those inmates are in there for a lot more than 30 days. I don't have an average number for you, but that's just $4,000 right there. DCS spent $14 million in a year. They're averaging about $2,000 a child. I would say it's probably more than that, because what we're happening, and that goes to the recidivism, is those same families go in and out of the system. So you might spend $2,000 on one case, but then you're going to spend it again, and you're going to spend it again. And then you're gonna see those children whose parents were in the DCS system, they grow up to have children, and they're in this system. There are hard facts that show it's not working. If you're just going round and round in circles, it's money that is not well spent. And what we're finding is we're probably spending about $1,000 a family to get them into real counseling services to really help them. We think that's I know 200,000 is a lot of money, but we think that's a drop in the bucket compared to what we're spending, in the future. The school corporation spends about $9,726,000 per student, at least that's the 2020 figures. Look at how many of them don't graduate. They're not out there being functioning adults and working, and those are having serious ramifications. And I think the school corporation is about all of their money from mental health services. So we're gonna lose that gap that's filled in at the school as well. So we're asking for 200,000. It's a lot of money. I think it's worth every penny. I'm a big believer in it. I think our children deserve this. I have also, in addition to the PowerPoint, I gave you 4 letters. Candace is going to talk about some of them. I'm going to give you just one example. So I have these teenagers, 17, 18, with a small infant, right? They're in my court. It was cats and dogs fighting in court. I sent them into this program. They got some good co-parenting counseling. They got a parenting coordinator. They come back 6 months later, and it is like a 180. They can talk to each other respectfully. They will say in court that they understand the other person's position. It's a complete change. And you think, it's not just for that one child, right? These kids are 17, 18. They're gonna have other children, and they're gonna have children with other people, but what they're learning now is gonna benefit them, right? It's gonna impact the money that we end up spending on this family. It just has a real impact. And the nice thing to hear from them is when they came back, they said, Judge, I know we're getting along, but can we stay in the program? Like, they themselves see the benefit of being in the program and having some professional guidance. Yes, should health insurance pay for it? Yes. Should the parents be required to pay for it themselves? Sure, that would be optimal, but they can't. They can't, and in the long term, I think it's our county that's gonna be seeing the benefit of it all.
You had just kind of hit on something, one of my questions, and I have a feeling I know the answer to it, but are you seeing success like in all different types of backgrounds and groups? Because I think, when we think of maybe, even though we might, have this stereotype or this idea of who is ending up, having the difficulties, I think we're seeing this though across all different socioeconomic, you talk about DCS repeat offenders. What types of, I guess, are you seeing it benefiting different groups, or are we seeing like a more of a cyclical type thing?
I think Candace will be able to say more, but we don't have any restrictions on who we're putting in the program. So we're gonna have some that are in the DCS system. We're gonna have some that are just poor and not educated, but then we've got some that are highly educated and affluent. But we're not restricting people. I mean, if we can
And they
get
just
it,
might not be getting along very well in helping their child.
that'd be an understatement.
Yeah.
That would be an understatement. And
Yeah.
Candace, I think, can talk more. The nice thing is, I think Candace sees the more positive side effects than I do. Because, after a few months, I'll start to get discouraged, and she'll just send me a message saying, we got 2 wins today. And that's all I need to know is, like, she can see on her end more than I do that it's working. I can see on some ends where attorneys are withdrawing their appearance and saying, we don't need to be involved in this case, they're in the project, everything's going fine. Hey, cancel this hearing, everything is going fine. So that's how, from an empirical level, we know that it's working.
And then wraparound, I saw, is that more wraparound services through your court? Or we used to use the term wraparound a lot, like with the schools, like involving, Hamilton Center or other agencies. Is that still technically what wraparound is?
Right, it's not court services, it's all those kinds of social
Everyone kind of
services.
coming together.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's not necessarily a specific agency, you're just kind of using that term wraparound.
I think Candace uses whoever will do the best
work,
job for the
yeah.
least amount of money.
Yeah.
And one thing Casey just started is that they're gonna be providing the Strengthening Families course, which is going to be a great parenting skills development. So I'm going to let Candace give you a few stories, and then I'm going to come back up and have a few more things to say.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I deeply am appreciative to be able to share the successes of this program. As the Family Court Navigator, we started in Division II, and Judge Reddy has spearheaded this, but we have moved into Division III with Judge Mulliken, and I have recently started working with the Vigo County Crime Victim Assistance. And so the first story I want to tell you about is the young girl. She was a sex trafficking victim, and DCS ran the case until they completed what needed to be done. The perpetrator was taken care of, and the threat was removed from the situation. But the child still needed assistance. And this is where that gap falls. When DCS does what they do, they move on, but the child was still a victim of sex trafficking, and DCS was saying this is as far as we can take it, and I was able to partner with them and to move forward, and that was because of the communication between the different agencies that we could work with this child, so she does not fall through the gaps. She's going to need intensive care, and this program is going to make that available to her and to her mother. And then another case, which is, well, it just left me, hold on. Another case that is extremely interesting was, what was the other one I was telling? Forgot already. You know, it's nervous talking to you guys. I act like I've got it
Well,
together.
we're not even scary, for God's sakes.
So, we have a case where the child this is also a DCS case, and they came to me with this one, which to me this is huge, that we were forming this ability to have a communication, open dialogue, conversation within the legalities of what we can do. But this is a mom that severely abused her child, and the mother and the other person involved in this case has been removed from it, but DCS came to me and said, with the partnership with Judge Reddy, when we close out this case in 10 days, would the Family Court Navigator program be able to take this on? This child is going to need a lot of services and a lot of long-term care, and the protective factors were already put in place by DCS. They could take it so far, and then we can move on from there. So it was a great communication in working with the father in this case and protecting this young girl. This was extreme abuse, things that I think, how else can somebody harm a child? And this is one of those cases where it was new to me how this child was harmed. So we want to keep fighting for our most vulnerable and partnering with all of the organizations that are working to protect the most vulnerable, but meeting this gap, which has failed to be met for a long time. And we're so glad to have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
I think, were you here when there was the lady that told her story? Was that, you know who I'm talking about? She talked to Gretchen. Okay. But it's powerful for us to hear like the stories too, because we are so numbers and everything driven. So thank you for sharing that.
And
So
you know,
I
it's
appreciate that.
interesting.
We had a really neat one the other day that shared.
It's interesting to think, you know, over all the years, and, you know, David just basically sees this. I mean, you know, we think we deal with people and run them through the courts and adjudicate and blah, 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 and send them out the door. But it's not over for them. It's just beginning, really.
And that's what I think we've been doing for 40 years is we'd issue divorce decrees, say be on your way, and I think now we're seeing those ramifications.
And that's why it's repetitive and, you know, and then they wind up back in jail and back and so on. And David can tell 1,000 cases, and half the time they wind up at the morgue.
Well, lots of times when they come in with this very high conflict, you know, one of the lectures I give them is, you can argue like this, and I will tell you 5 years from now, you'll be holding hands over in juvenile court, because that's where you're gonna be. And then I see that in families, and they come back, I say, I told you 5 years ago that if you didn't stop arguing and put your children first, that's where you're being, and that's where you are. But I think now what we have is we have the resources to get them into that co-parenting counseling, which is really effective. And getting children in counseling so that they have someone to talk to. I have children come in, because in the beginning I'd say, you know what, just go to 5. Just go to 5 sessions, that's all you have to do. But they would come back to me and say, can you order me to do more? I don't want my parents to know, but can you order me to do more? And I think that just shows it's very effective. Now, yesterday, you asked about priorities. I believe in this program, and I know you have a lot of people coming to you asking for money and making requests, and everyone thinks that theirs is most important. Same here. I think this is most important, but also getting raises for our salary, because this is a lot of burden. This is a lot of extra work that they have to put in. You know, when my kids were younger, they used to come into the office with me, and I remember one day, I think it was Kavish that said, they have got to have the worst job in the world, right? Because no one's happy when they come to the courthouse, right? People are always complaining about something. They're mad about their situation. They're mad about my ruling. They're mad, and they're yelling at my staff, and they put up with it. And then all of these pilot projects, I've got 3 pilot projects going. That's a lot of extra work on them. So if you think you've got to reduce the request, I understand. I guess in terms of priorities, I still think both are equally. But if our staff can't get raises, it's demoralizing to them, and it's hard for them to, and if they don't get the work done, and I'm very demanding, I think all of our judges are like, we want our work done quickly and it's out fast. And I can tell you that when I see in comparison to our contiguous counties, our staff are working harder and they are quick to the punch. So if you have to prioritize, I talked to Candace about this. We're still grant writing, we'll find money somewhere. I'm a big believer that it's a community problem, and this is where it needs to be paid for, but we're always going to be looking for grants. And that's something that Candace and Brandon and everyone else at Casey is very good at. But if you have to pick and choose, give us something. But
I appreciate you,
Yeah.
because I just wanted to throw that out there.
any other questions?
And I don't know what we'd do without Casey getting some of those grants. I mean, when we talk about community, and I know with your court, some of the other programs that they have, it's just lifeline to this community, so.
And I know with the state grant we got, I think Candace has to submit quarterly reports, and she submits quarterly reports with stories, just similar to what she's told you. And I think they're typically very impressed. I think we got off the ground running. I think it took several other people who got grants. It took them a whole year just to get their project together but we hit the ground running. So I think they've been impressed, and hopefully we're gonna get some more money from them, and I think Brandon's in the middle of writing for another grant. I think I'm one of those, I wanna make sure we have plenty. I don't wanna be at a point where it's like, okay, well, it's August, all our money's gone, no other family gets served. I wanna always make sure that there is plenty of surplus, so that, because you don't know month to month, year to year, what are the demands gonna be. And so I guess I'm one of those, I'd rather have more, and everyone gets services that they need. And we do have some restrictions. There are some families where we're not seeing progress, and I say, listen, we're not paying for this anymore. We're not seeing progress. We had one father who has got a drug addiction problem, and I said, listen, we're not gonna pay for any more supervised parenting time. You can go into a drug treatment program, or you're gonna start paying for these services. And you know what? He went to a drug treatment program. So we do put those kinds of restrictions if we're not seeing progress. It's not like a, what's the word?
Free lunch.
Yes. So happy to answer any other questions.
Just last one, with Casey hiring like Jennifer Todd, and I think there was one other, I think that's what you alluded to, you're getting them in faster to care, okay? Is that kind of one of the main services you use, is like the Casey counseling, or just a variety?
At this time, I have 25 providers that I go to. We are mainstreaming, as this is now into our second year, 3 years of doing this, but 2 years in providing. I'm able to bring that down to about 14 providers, because as I do team meetings, trying to keep track of 25 providers is a great
Oh, yeah.
deal. It's over the top, too much. So to answer your question, yes, we are mainstreaming more of our services into Casey Counseling. This is for supervised visits, co-parenting classes, individual counseling, and family counseling. But the need is still being sent out to other areas that, have their expertise. Counseling Pathways is a big one. Of course, we work very closely with Jabalt as well, and some of the smaller, even some faith-based counseling. If the family has a strong faith base and this is important to them, we'll make that a priority as well.
No, I was going to say, and I appreciate what you're doing, for sure. In 28 years of law enforcement, I mean, you see it, we're dealing with third generation of these families. And, they only know what they know. Their parents raised them the way they were raised, and, it worked for them, so it's going to work for their children. So I do appreciate this. Said for a long time, you've got to break that chain somewhere, so it kind of seems to be where this falls. What is the likelihood of receiving more grants? Are there many out there?
There's many out there for if you're already in criminal trouble. There's not many out there on this end when we're really focused on prevention. And I think that's been the hard part. Even when the family, the addictions and mental health, I think we sort of saw a pathway in, and I think, they were willing to give that to us. I'm hoping that we're going to start to see more that's more on the prevention. I think the one that we're applying for now is probably going to be more for juvenile court. Yeah, I think the one that's in the middle of being applied for is more for juvenile court. I think we're going to look at the Lilly Foundation to see if there's something there. So, I think there's always a possibility, because I think, Brandon Halleck's pretty creative at grant writing, and he's got some people that help him. That's the best that I can say.
But it's kind of cutting edge, isn't it? It's not been done before, so we don't.
And yeah, no one is providing these services, or paying for them. I think what I'm hoping for is that if we can, and that's why I really hope the grant from the National Center for State Courts comes through, because I think that once we demonstrate that it's working, I think that's when we can get the state legislature, because the state legislature is paying for a lot of problem-solving courts, but all those problem-solving courts are focused on criminal behavior. And to me, it's too late. And I think if we can show that this is working, then we can start to get funding. Family courts have never gotten funding. When I first started, I was writing grants for $1,000, $2,000 to pay for drug testing. There's no money out there. So it's definitely innovative, and whatever you are able to give us, we'll be thrilled with, we will work with, and I think we're creative in figuring out how to get the most services for people.
Is there any other fund this can be taken from?
Well, I think that have you,
I know Brandon's talking to Joni. For whatever reason, I think we weren't aware, and Vicki, I think you may be brought to my attention. I think we weren't aware of some money they had. I think we were too late to the punch.
yeah.
But I think she thinks she might have a little bit of money.
She might have a little bit left over that she can reallocate. I know she's budgeted out for next year. I know that she's talked with,
Just talk to
Halleck
Brandon.
and got something going. But she is looking at what she might have left this year where she might have appropriated a little bit more in an item that she didn't need. Health First Indiana. I don't know if this program, David, would fit underneath the list, if we can make it work. But as far as the other funds, your revenue funds, money general health, I was trying to think of something. I will commend Judge Reddy. Since she came in, and she's right, she was writing grants for $1,000, $2,000.
And there'd be several, and I was driving people because they were all in different line items.
And just to my point, just as like community member or city council, I agree. David said, until we break this cycle, this is where it needs to be. I don't know if all of us, since got a great program, we need to be State House. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know, we all work pretty well together. Maybe we should all start doing some campaign letters to our,
Yeah, if you ever need, I mean, especially, you know.
I think that's where the
Our
data
legislature.
collection is
It's not
really
if
gonna help.
ever, I mean, always,
To
it's
handle
like
the
always, it's
median
not if, it's
situation.
for sure.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yes.
Well, I know the Chief Justice is on board, because I had a conversation with her at one of our district meetings, so she was pretty in awe. She's the one that helped me get in touch with some of the National Center for State Courts to start working on some of these things, so, she's a very big advocate, so I think if we can then show her the numbers.
And I'll tell you what else, the Wabash Valley Foundation is inheriting a whole flock of money too, and I'd go pound
Oh, we
on
better
those
go
all
talk
day
to
and
them.
night.
Money
And, well, they've
coming in.
always been very generous in
There'll
giving
be some
more.
new
They
money
just now
coming
getting the
in.
Wabash Valley resource money,
Mhm.
millions of dollars. Write that name
They will
down.
be- they will be our next
Casino
call.
money that'll be coming in through a different
we'll
foundation.
discuss that.
But I would say even with the background, I mean, I don't know, you know, the background of their councils, but, you know, you have, you know, David, with law enforcement, you know, Vicky
Karen.
is familiar with the courts, and then myself in education, who sees the impact on children, just the background of, we see it not just in our, you know, funding capacity, but in our professional lives as well, so if you ever need us to advocate, I love pounding the State House, so, I go up
It's
there for
next
a
on
lot
my
of things.
agenda, but
I know
I
my
wanna
son
see the
would help me
numbers. I gotta see
advocate.
numbers.
Yeah.
Have-
And Cheryl, you know, being from her background too with the city and her family, I mean, I think we've got to start trying to be more proactive. I've been saying that since I got elected. It's driving me
But
insane.
this
So
is one of
this
those-
is what we need to do.
But we've gotta be willing to do it for 15 years. I think if you wanna really start to see
Oh, yeah.
how's
have to
it
make the
impacted.
commitment.
That's
You-
it.
you've
I
gotta
mean,
wait
it's-
it out.
It's not just you just have to do it. It's not, well, we should. We simply, well, do it. Just get off your rear end and do it. That's the thing. And every legislator, it's not if you know them or if they're in your district, it's every legislator. Find out who's on the committee and freaking drive, just get on their back and don't get off, period. Gotta do it. They don't pay attention. They're like, their blinders on.
At one time, I thought I knew numbers, but do you know what the divorce rate in Vigo County is? Does it go with the state or nation?
You know, I
50%?
don't, but I feel like Brandon might have those figures, but I don't. I'm
you-
sure we're at least, well, but now with the trend that you're seeing is that people are not getting married, they're just having children out of wedlock, so.
So that kind of leads into the second question. Do you know in the school corporation, the free and reduced lunch, the students that are on that?
I mean, I know in certain schools it's 90%, but do I know which kids are, no.
Or what the percentage is, not
Some
necessarily.
of them on average, I think like the average has been around
Like 60%?
60 to 70%. But yeah, depending on the school that you hit, I think North's a great one to gauge because we're like of a bunch of them together. I want to say that we're 60%, but Vigo County, if I'm right, and I think it's been in the last 5 years, we have the highest child poverty rate in the state.
We have the
We were like
highest,
bottom.
yes.
Yeah, which
have the
impacts our
highest.
schools, which impacts the courts, which impacts everything.
We're also pretty high on the list in terms of removals. They're removing at least
Yeah.
one kid a day. That's how bad it's
That was
gotten.
when we
We're
spent at
also-
juvenile, that
We're
was
high in the
awful.
transient living, so people are just constantly moving, and that's a lot of instability for children.
I think with those stats, it's a lot easier to go to the state for a program like this, knowing that we're in the bottom 95 percentile in most of those.
But would they give money just to one county?
It could be a pilot,
Be a pilot.
even though we've already started it. It could be a
Or-
pilot.
There was a push from John Ford on some other things, a regional program. I mean, Sullivan, Clay, whatever that may be. Yeah.
I agree with David with those stats. If we could get all that together, I'm more, try to help you, more than willing. I'm sure they are too, and David's got the great background to really go pushing legislators. Like we said, it'll take time,
Mhm.
but
Okay,
This
I will
session.
talk with John Ford to sort of see how he did it and maybe how
we're
get
trying
some help.
to help for the future here to get
Yes.
funding.
And I would say you'd probably get support from someone from the schools or,
Oh, yeah, Megan Kirk has been great to
in a
work with.
heartbeat because
And
we're
Stafford, Mayor
trying to
Joe-
look
Mayor
at
Joe
being
Bonella,
creative with
great
some of the stuff we're doing and including trauma. I know Judge Mulliken's working with trauma training for you guys, and I have requested it for us as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
believe it,
So,
it starts with what you, from what he sees.
I just think we need
Oh,
to do it,
it's-
just do it. And I think we just need to get this $200,000 together, even if we have to go out and stand in a tin cup on the middle of Third Street.
I will
Well,
reach out
we will do more
to-
fundraising if we, yeah, we
I
will find
reach
a way
out
to get the money.
Joni and talk to her. We talk a lot about the HFI budget, Joni and I do.
Mhm.
I'll reach out to her
Okay,
and see
see how we can get
if
other
if she's
resources.
got anything available to help with this program.
That'd be great.
on a side note, I want to thank you for and I know some of them are Kavisha's friends, but Judge Reddy had a couple of our students shadow and observe her courts, and
Yeah, oh, did they tell you about
came
that?
back and could not stop talking about it.
Did they tell you about
And
the lecture I gave them afterwards?
I can't remember what it was, but they gave me, they're like.
Yes,
yes.
there were two young girls, and so they got to see, like, the custody battle and the things that go on and the drug addiction. I pulled them aside and I said, this is why you choose very carefully who you have children with. I mean, their eyes
Is
were
that a
wide open,
no?
like, yep, I get it now. I think until you see it in court, you don't really understand. And
Well, and I think what it does too, these are two outstanding young people who want to go into some sort of field.
Yeah.
And, you know, by working with them early, and again, I know there was that personal connection, but I can't tell you, I mean, and I'm close to both of them, but they were nonstop talking about it
Well,
with me.
good.
So it was super cool. So I never got to share that with you. So
Thank you.
Thank you for taking them on.
We don't finish this off. This is finish.
What records are they? Oh, the end of the year? You don't have those?
Did they not send them to Kara?
Yeah.
She don't have them either?
Let me ask June, because I know she puts them together and sends them over, so I can't imagine how. Okay. I'll have her, yeah, just send them directly to you? Okay, I'll do that. Can I get the thumb drive back?
Yes, yes. Should I just pull it out? Are we good to pull it out? Probably. Seriously, nice presentation. Yeah. I gotta get out of this thing.
Well, okay, I can stay and visit. I mean, if that's gonna help, I'll stay and visit.
What is my thing? I can't get out of this thing. Where's Scott? He's got me. I can't get myself out of here. Oh. I can't get myself. Nothing's moving. He's got me in PowerPoint and I can't get out of it. Finally.
Beagle County Budget Committee is in recess until 1:00.
Well, no, I need, no, that's okay, cause he was just asking about that too for next year, so you've already got it done.
Because so here's the 25, and of course, it calculates how much your parents pay. So, and there's stipends in there.
Right,
They might change or whatever, but
Right.
those are in there, longevity is in there, and I need the
but my,
months.
what I'm asking is, so if we hired a new deputy, right now, it's 57,
And you just look at,
57 plus,
if you go down to the yellow one, here, these are, don't look at that one, because that's got
57, plus there's their benefits. Which, so it's 61, if we add in, if they brand new, if the family insurance is now 38, 37.